Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Coach Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. Our recitation is Maj Mahalla Tija. Se Sach Lage jo Tudh Bhaye, Sada Sach Sevah Sach Sabaye. Sache Sabad Sacha Salahi, Sache Mel Milavaniya. How wari jio wari, Sach Salahaniya. ਸੱਚ ਧਿਆਇਨ ਸੇ ਚਿਤ ਰਾਤੇ, ਸੱਚੇ ਸੱਚ ਸਮਾਵਣਿਆ ਰਹਾਓ। ਜਹ ਦੇਖਾ ਸੱਚ ਸਭਨੀ ਥਾਈ, ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦੀ ਮਨੇ ਵਸਾਈ। ਤਨ ਸੱਚਾ ਰਸਨਾ ਸਚ ਰਾਤੀ, ਸੱਚ ਸੁਣ ਆਖ ਵਖਾਣਿਆ। ਮਨਸਾ ਮਾਰ ਸੱਚ ਸਮਾਣੀ, ਇਨ ਮਨ ਡੀਠੀ ਸਭ ਆਵਣ ਜਾਣੀ। ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਸੇਵੇ ਸਦਾ ਮਨ ਨਿਹ ਚਲ, ਨਿਜ ਘਰ ਵਾਸਾ ਪਾਵਣਿਆ। ਗੁਰ ਕੈ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਹਿਰਦੇ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ, ਮਾਇਆ ਮੋਹ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਜਲਾਇਆ। ਸੱਚੋ ਸੱਚਾ ਵੇਖ ਸਾਲਾਹੀ, ਗੁਰ ਸ਼ਬਦੀ ਸਚ ਪਾਵਣਿਆ। ਜੋ ਸਚ ਰਾਤੇ ਤਿਨ ਸੱਚੀ ਲਿਵ ਲਾਗੀ, ਹਰ ਨਾਮ ਸੰਭਾਲਹਿ ਸੇ ਵਡ ਭਾਗੀ। ਸੱਚੇ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਆਪ ਮਿਲਾਏ, ਸਤ ਸੰਗਤ ਸਚ ਗੁਣ ਗਾਵਣਿਆ। ਲੇਖਾ ਪੜੀਐ ਜੇ ਲੇਖੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਵੈ, ਉਹ ਅਗਮ ਅਗੋਚਰ ਸ਼ਬਦੇ ਸੁਧ ਹੋਵੈ। ਅਨ ਦਿਨ ਸੱਚ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਸਲਾਹੀ, ਹੋਰ ਕੋਈ ਨਾ ਕੀਮਤ ਪਾਵਣਿਆ। ਪੜ ਥਾਕੈ ਸ਼ਾਂਤ ਨ ਆਈ, ਤ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਨਾ ਜਾਲੈ ਸੁਧ ਨ ਕਾਈ। ਭਿਖ ਬਿਹਾਜੈ ਭਿਖ ਮੋਹ ਪਿਆਸੇ, ਕੂੜ ਬੋਲ ਭਿਖ ਪਾਵਣਿਆ। ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦੀ ਏਕੋ ਜਾਣਾ, ਦੂਜਾ ਮਾਰ ਮਨ ਸੱਚ ਸਮਾਣਾ। ਨਾਨਕ ਏਕੋ ਨਾਮ ਵਰਤੈ, ਮਨ ਅੰਤਰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦੀ ਪਾਵਣਿਆ। This is a composition of the third Nanak, Guru Amar Das, in Rag Maj, and appears on page 119 of the Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So the question is, in this passage, who is being held out as an exemplar? To whom is Guru Amar Das offering his salutations? Because if you recall, just about every sabad in this rag, he has, in the Rahao Pankti, offered how vari jio vari, submission, homage, adoration, adulation to an exemplar that he holds out. So who is that exemplar that he's holding out this time? He goes on to say, Sach dhyan se sach rate, Sache sach samavaniya. I submit over and over again to those who have become immersed, that is, who have discovered the truth about themselves, who have become immersed in the self. Sache sach samavaniya. And how have they done it? They've done it by fixing their attention on the self. Sach dhyan. And become imbued with self-knowledge. Sach dhyan se sach rate, sache sach samavaniya. So in effect, he's describing here the characteristics of what we call bhakti, devotional love, which is central to Sikhi. And in fact, lays out some of the properties of this particular bhakti that we are speaking about in the first section. He says, Se sach lage jo tudh bhaye, sada sach sevah sahaj suvaye. Sache sabd sacha salahi, sache mel milavaniya. Those jo who are filled with devotion, jo tudh bhaye. Tudh bhaye, generally translated as only those who are approved or liked by by Akal Purkh will engage in devotion, which seems to me perhaps not quite the way it is meant to be, because it is us who have to first cultivate the soil of the being, to be ready, to be receptive, which means we have to inculcate a sense of devotion in ourselves first. So to this translator, it seems as if what is being said is that those who are filled with devotion will discover the true self. Say Sach Lage, say Sach Lage. So it seems to me that what is being said here is that devotion is a precondition to finding the self. And so what is that devotion consist of? He goes on to say the self is experienced, Sache Mel Milavanya, by developing the excellences of the self, Sach Salahi. Here, Salahi can take on various connotations. It can also mean Salahi is to praise, to glorify, which is what we do when we in a congregation do Kirtan. That is what we are doing. We are glorifying the qualities, the excellences. It can also mean, and does in fact mean, to inculcate those qualities. To inculcate those qualities. So that's one condition of bhakti, of devotion, is to inculcate these qualities. And then to take to heed the instruction, the narrative of Sache Sabad. Here, two of these conditions being laid out. Then, Guru Amar Das says, then and only then, with intuitive ease, Sahaj Subhai, self-awareness comes to dwell in the mind forever. Sada Sach Seva Sahaj Subhai. That is what happens. And through this practice, you are in fact Tan Sacha Rasna Sach Rati Sach Sun Aakh Vakhaniya. What does that mean? Through the insight of Gur wisdom, through Gur Prasadi, remember that condition, you are now offering the body. What does that mean? It means that your actions are being submitted in the service of the self. Rasana, your tongue. By tongue, what is meant is your speech, your thoughts. And such suna aakh vakhani, the ears, hearing. In other words, the body, your actions, your speech, and your attention is being placed in the service of the self. And that is how self-knowledge propagates itself in the mind. Vakhane, propagation in the mind. Manovase. When that happens, then the self is seen reflected everywhere. Jahan dekha, sach sabni thai. And then in the next couple of sections, Guru Amar Das Ji describes further what happens. He says, Maya moho sabad jalai. This is Guru ke sabad. Once you imbibe the teachings of Guru ka sabad, which is the instruction, the teachings, the initiation, then Maya moh sabad jalai. It burns, the teachings burns attachments to passing things. And what you become to understand is that the self is to be found and perceived through salahi, cultivation of qualities. And those who are filled with devotion become attuned to the self. Jo sach rate, tin sachi live lagi. And they are called sevadpagi. Great is their fortune. What is big, great? Pag literally means a section, a part, hissa. That means great is your fortune, that you have cleansed the ignorance of the ego through self-knowledge. Har naam samale sevat bhagi. Samale oftentimes is translated as to hold on to, which may not be incorrect, but if you look at the root meanings of the word samale, it means to be without stain, to be immaculate. And so the suggestion here is that the ignorance, and what is that ignorance? It is really your ego. That is cleansed through self-knowledge. So great is your fortune if you have managed to cleanse your ego through self-knowledge. And what else does devotional bhakti do? Followers of the enlightener, Satgur, unite in true congregation and sing the glories of true self, Kirtan. Sache sabad aab milai sat sangat sach gun gavanaya. Sach gun gavanaya. Now, I know that we shouldn't be taking this literally, but perhaps here we should be taking it literally, because gavanaya is singing in a congregation, and that is what we do. That is our practice. It is only, as we have seen in previous Shabads, it is when you sing with the tongue that you well up with emotion of devotion. Otherwise, mere intellectualization is not going to do that. You need not only cognitive understanding and intellectualization, but that's simple abstraction. To experience, you have to bring within yourself those emotions. And the Gurus have given us Kirtan to do that. And that is sung with the tongue. Sat Sangat. In Sangat, Sach Gun Gavanaya. So again, context is very important. Gavanaya can sometimes mean living a life. Gavanaya sometimes means singing. But because Guru Amar Das Ji is giving us an insight into some of the practices involved, listening to the Guru, cultivating the excellences, singing, doing kirtan in a congregation. He moves on to say that, again, this is a theme that runs through his writings. He says, Lekha padiye je lekhe vich hove, meaning that if an accounting of the self were possible, then we could read about it, right? But it so happens that the self, agam, agochar, is incomprehensible, is inexpressible. How do you read that? You read that through awareness. Sabde Sudh hove. Through the sabad, Sudh hove, awareness. So it's a matter of cultivating awareness and seeing the self reflected all around you. It is not a matter of lekha padana, to read something, because then he goes on to caution us. Pad pad thake sandana ai. Those who read scriptural texts over and again grow weary, exhausted, pad pad thake, and yet sandana ai, find no peace of mind. Trishna Jale, the fire within of desires, continues to burn. And there is no awareness either of what is being read or of the self. Trishna Jale, Sudh Nakai, Sudh Aini. Why? Because in reality, the ego-driven are, as Guru Amar Das Ji says, Bekh Behajya. They are traders of mammon, of wealth, of the world, really, chasing after. They're thirsty for worldly phenomenon, for fleeting sensations. Bekh moh pyase. And they speak untruth in order to indulge themselves. Bekh behajay, bekh moh pyase, Kood bol, speaking the untruth. Kood bol, bik khavanaya, because they want to really indulge in the senses. And so in the end, the Guru reminds us, through the enlightener's guidance, Guru Prasadi, the ego is dissolved. Duja mar. Duja here is the ego. And then the one is recognized, eko jana. So the ego is always clouding out the self. So you have to really dissolve it in order for the self to be resplendent within the mind. Man sach samanna. Guru Prasadi eko jana, duja mar, man sach samanna. It's in the mind, in the consciousness. Nanak eko naam varte, man antar. Guru Prasadi pavanya. So self-knowledge, the knowledge of the ek, the self, is within. Varte man antar. And you find it through Guru Prasadi. Nanak eko naam varte man antar Guru Prasadi pavanaya. On that note, until the next time, Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.